welcome back to the online summit series, Yoga Beyond Exercise, conversations to heal and lead us into the new paradigm of peace, harmony, and prosperity. Today's guest is Tsunma Tenzin Dasel. Tsunma is a Buddhist nun and the primary meditation and Dharma instructor of Tashi Gatsel Ling Buddhist Center in Maine. She collaborates with several Maine high schools to give talks on Buddhism and guides meditation for students and teachers and other teachers at various colleges and retreat centers around the world. I hope you enjoy this talk as much as I did. How would you explain? So there's going to be people that are watching this interview who have no prior knowledge of the specifics of Buddhism. But what I get a lot is that, like, I'm not a religious person, but if I was going to be, Buddhism is the one that I resonate with most. So maybe you could speak to that.
Sure. That's a great question. Look, Buddhism can be looked at in many different ways. And in this modern day and age, even Albert Einstein said during his lifetime, if there were to be any kind of a tradition in the future that will work with the modernity that is going to come, it will be Buddhism. And basically, this is it. His Holiness the Dalai Lama, one of my main teachers, said we can look at Buddhism in three main ways. We can look at Buddhism, as you said, as a religion, which not many people are very interested in religion anymore in these days and these generations. And one can hardly blame them. Religions have not had a really great history in terms of wars, in terms of trying to convert people, in terms of conflicts that arise because mine's got to be better than yours. So Buddhism can also, as a religion, be left to the monastics and the practitioners that want to take it on in that direction. But it doesn't mean it's not availing itself to others as a practical philosophy. So we look at Buddhism as a philosophy. Philosophy is just a teaching of a way through reason and logic that proves itself out by saying, don't believe it just because I said so. Even this was what drew me to Buddhism. The first quote that I saw on this little Dharma center in Maine that I went to, that's still there, was a quote by the Buddha. And it said, believe nothing unless it accords with your own knowing. Unless it makes sense to you, no matter who has said it, even if I myself have said it, leave it alone, end quotes, and then Buddha. And I thought, wow, that's great. I had never met a teacher in all my readings and searching kind of for truth. Since I was quite young, I started really this idea of what is truth was kind of compelling to me. Reading, Plato and Socrates and all these people who tried to talk about truth, Descartes and all these thinkers. But when I saw that, I thought that is a very confident teacher, because they're not saying, believe me because I found the truth. They're saying, you investigate. Now, to the Western mind especially, that's very compelling, because we like to take that individual responsibility to decide for ourselves, okay, this holds validity or it doesn't. So you can take a philosophical approach. The third way now that Buddhism is really coming into the 21st century is through science. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama, for over 30 years, has been encouraging, with the help and connection with Western scientists, through the Mind Life Conference, now through a new series of books that are coming out, looking at the nature of mind in many different levels, and really thinking about what is mind, where is mind, what is consciousness, and thinking about also from the West, because we've put a lot of attention into the physical of health being the body, and the mind-body connection. Well, how does it connect? Is the body the mind? Is the mind the body? Like we're not really taught a lot about these things, but people are thinking more and more about them because they're very fascinating. And so just through a strictly scientific exploration, through reading about it, through neuroscientists doing exploration on meditation, what's happening when people meditate, if they're just doing simple breath meditation, what parts of the brain are going on, lighting up, if they're really doing compassion meditation, the frontal lobe, what's that really, how is the mind interacting with our physicality? So, I would say for people who are not that much interested and compelled by the religion that Buddha taught, even his foundation of the path is good ethics. So we can talk about secular ethics. Secularism has nothing to do with religion, except it says, look, the secular society holds open a freedom for all its members to follow the faith that they choose to without needing to compel anyone else to have to follow that faith. So secular society holds space and freedom and liberty for that anyone of good faith to follow whatever makes them feel more open-hearted, more loving, more connected to their higher truth, without saying, no, that's not right. But it also asks people not to try to push that onto anybody. So in secular ethics, we're just saying, look, the modern world has laws that have been established because they help the world function. We have ideas about not harming, not killing, not stealing, not lying, not engaging in harmful behaviors that come back, that are deceptive to harm others as well as harm oneself, to really take care of life and preserve it. So the Buddha, he's starting with the foundation of any kind of exploration through the religious side of it, or through the philosophical side, or through the scientific side, with this kind of secular ethical approach. And we can all benefit from that. So if I, as a monastic, have vows to not harm, which I have, that doesn't just benefit me, that benefits you. So if I'm careful about not harming an insect, not harming animals, not harming any form of life, then I'm taking care of all of life, and you're directly benefiting from that. You don't even have to know what I believe in, and you can say, yeah, I like that. I can approach you and I can feel like, you're maybe a monk, maybe a nun. I mean, I get it a lot because I'm quite tall and I'm big. I don't care. I happen to be a nun. I'm born as a girl and very happy for that. But the gender part doesn't matter. The race part doesn't matter. The nationality part and the age part doesn't matter. The part that should matter is you feel a warm heart, and you feel like if you needed help, you could approach that person. They would be open to you. They'd give you help. They would never harm you. The way they're moving with their body, the way they're speaking with their words, that there's already an open-hearted essence there. And so that ethic is what we have to start to build our practice on as following the Buddha, because the Buddha was known, if you read the sutras and you read life stories about the Buddha, because he was a historical figure born here in India with the name of Siddhartha before he attained his enlightenment. His life story shows that even before he went on his spiritual path, he was, quite well thought of in his community and his society. So this should be the basic thing: is what are we doing in our life? What do we follow as truths that help us feel happier, more peaceful, more patient, more healthy, more committed inside, that our mind is not easily shaken? And we don't really need religion for that, but we do need some kind of a guideline that helps us decide, okay, do I believe in this or not? And so the Buddha gave these 4 noble truths, and they were very basic, and they're also not even really religious sounding to my mind. I mean, lovely viewers, you decide for yourself. The first one, he said, is there is suffering in the world. He kind of, in Indian tradition, and here in India, after his lifetime, a big university, for a long time, it was the largest university in the world, called the Nalanda community. It was a big community of monks and scholars in northeastern India. And Nalanda tradition was based on reason, by investigating the truth of the teachings, by debate, and by not being allowed to really proselytize and go out and try to get people to join Buddhism. People had to come to it themselves. But the Buddha took his own spiritual quest a little bit like a doctor would look at a physical problem with somebody. He first asked, what is the problem? Like, why are people suffering? Or why are people unhappy? And he said, people suffer. There is suffering. That was his first diagnosis. Yes, there is suffering in this world. He looked around him and he saw a lot of suffering, you can imagine, because you've been to India, Julie, so you've seen there's a lot of poverty here. Even before the coronavirus, COVID, there was a lot of challenge. A lot of people live very basic subsistence lifestyle. So 2,600 years ago, you can imagine, the case. So he said, yes, there is suffering. Secondly, he asked, why? Why do people suffer? And that's when he really started to do more investigation inwardly, like really try to get to the essence of the nature of reality. And what he concluded was people suffer because they don't really see the reality for the way it is. They misperceive reality. They layer on the idea of their body that there's a permanent I, an inherent I that's not going to change, that should always, have all of its gratifications met. And when things change, like even the temperature changes, we say, oh, I'm cold or I'm hot. I don't like this weather. I'm unhappy. And then maybe something happens and we hurt our foot or our body and we say, oh, I'm in pain. I'm suffering, because we start to think of our body as I. And he said, this going about it this way is all wrong. So because people are misperceiving the reality, their mind is actually adding layers of suffering because they're clinging. Their mind is clinging to things. They're looking for permanent happiness outside of themselves, saying like, oh, if I could only get this much money, I'd be so happy. All my problems would be solved. We know this is not true. If I could only have that pizza that I love every meal, I'd be just perfectly fine. My health would be fine. This is also not true. So he's looking very deeply at like, why aren't we finding the solution out of the suffering? And he's saying because we're misperceiving how we're seeing the world. The world is impermanent. It's changing all the time. If we keep looking for happiness in the outside world, which by its very nature is changing always because it's made of changeable material, we'll never have lasting happiness. You cannot get lasting happiness from something that's going to constantly change by its own nature. If you're looking for permanent happiness there, it doesn't make sense. It's irrational. So then he kept looking and he said, but there is a way out, actually. His third noble truth is there is a way to nirvana, to lasting peace. And then he laid out his fourth noble truth called the Eightfold Path, which is basically just very simple behavior. I mean, it's a way of investigating reality through meditation, through asking intense questions. That's why we use debate. So we try to use logic. Is reality like this? No, it's not like this. We'll prove it. Why do you think it's like that? So a lot of back and forth to get to what's called a right view. But some of the other ones are like right speech. So, use kind speech, maintain noble silence. You don't always have to repeat little rumors that you've heard, gossips. Just if you've seen it and you've witnessed it, you can speak to that. If you aren't sure about something, you just say, I don't know. And in the meantime, you start to live more in noble silence, just enjoying the peace that you start to find within your own mind stream. Right mindfulness is part of it, right livelihood. So do work that doesn't harm. Do work that's in accordance with non-harming, with loving kindness, with compassion, with joy. Do something that you really are called to do, but be sure it's not a harmful occupation. So like this, the Eightfold Path, he kind of laid it out and said, look, if you want to find a way out of suffering, a way to deal with the changeable nature of reality, of the impermanence, you've got to look at life. One of my teacher's main teachings, he was one of the early lamas to come to the West, was, in the West, we never look at impermanence and at death. And COVID is really making us have to take a hard look at it now. Om Mani Padme Hum. I'm so sorry that it's happening the way it is. But we have to see death as a natural part of life. And death can also be a reminder that we don't get to live forever. And so it tells us, look, life is so precious. Let's use it as the most precious, sacred opportunity. And this is what the Buddha was trying to share with us through his own intensive journey and quest to his final goal of reaching enlightenment, was we don't have all the time in the world. Not everyone even gets a human birth. Yes, we have almost 8 billion human beings now on the planet, but there are far more insects, far more bugs creeping and crawling around than there are human beings. They have consciousness. They have a body. Why aren't we one of them? Well, the Buddha said probably we have been that, because we're all living beginningless and endless lifetimes. But the more important thing is, in this life, if you're listening to me now, you're not an insect. We're human beings. We have opportunities that almost all other life forms do not have. And yet we've also created many more sufferings for many more life forms than any other species on this planet. This is true. As scared as we can be of sharks in the ocean, or of tigers here in India or in Bhutan, or of what are people afraid of in the US, bears, bear attacks. Those creatures as a species have never done even 1% or half of a percent of harm that the human beings have done to other species on this planet. How much stuff to choose to do something about it. So the Buddha is saying we have opportunities as human beings that no other life form planet has. A Buddha nature, everything that lives has Buddha nature, consciousness, sentience, potential for highest awakening. And so, you know, maybe that's a good project to work on while we have a chance. So you don't have to follow Buddhism, but you can think of it just in terms of logic. Like, what are you really here to do? What really don't you know about your full potential that you're jazzed to find out about? You know, that's kind of what he's saying. He's not saying you have to join and be a Buddhist. If you ever meet a Buddhist that says, oh, you should come and be a Buddhist, you should probably walk away. You know, honestly, I'm telling you that as a Buddhist nun, because the Buddha's message is compelling in that if you find something in Buddhism, if you read something, if you hear a talk, if you meet somebody and they seem like a really decent, you know, happy, alive human being, maybe you might think, well, I wonder what they found out to make them that way. And so, you know, then you can read on your own time and decide for yourself, wow, does this make sense or not? And these days, luckily, in the West, we have the connection from the East to the West, to India to the West. There are many, many wonderful teachers here on the planet right now, giving talks on their own websites or on YouTube, or like what Julie's putting together. So, you know, take advantage, just listen and decide for yourself, is this making sense? There's no need actually to be a Buddhist. You can make a lot of progress in your own inner happiness and your own joy and health and peace of mind by just taking what you think makes sense and putting that into practice. You don't have to, you know, call yourself anything.
That's a beautiful point. You know, I think people get stressed out, you know, about that one little thing. And I've always said that Buddhism is a philosophy, because it's wisdom that unless you take on the adventure of investigating yourself, for the exact reason that you said about the quote, you know, the Buddha always said, like, you've got to do the work yourself. Like, nobody can do it for you. And
Oh yeah.
find out if it's true. Test it like gold, you know?
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah, and how many teachings I've been at with His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, who's the head of all of our lineages, of the 4 main lineages of Tibetan Buddhism. By himself, he's a Gaelic monk, but he's studied with all the masters from the different traditions, and all the 4 lineages hold him as the epitome of our traditions. And so many times at teachings, he'll say, you know, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas cannot open up our minds and put their wisdom in. And I myself, by you coming here to these teachings, he might give some kind of empowerment, but mostly of the 3 days that he'll teach, they'll just be talks of what the Buddha was teaching, or what the philosophers from the Nalanda tradition were, you know, critiquing and commenting on. He's saying, look, you yourself have to go on the path. You know, it's lovely to be in His Holiness's presence. Of course it is. Or with Tsunma Tenzin Dasel, or with my root teacher, His Eminence Kensor Rinpoche Lobsang Seten. It's wonderful to be with beings who have devoted their whole lives to loving kindness, peace, compassion. And we can feel inspired by that. But there's no being saved by anybody in Buddhism. That's, you know, that's up to you. And that's wonderful. That gives you all the freedom to decide for yourself, as we said. That quote of the Buddha's not going to open up your mind and put all the wisdom in. No one's going to save you. But if you find something here that's valuable, you yourself can walk the path. You must walk the path yourself. There will be good guides. The Buddha found an authentic path. he became the authentic guide because he followed his own path. So he was able to validate that. And it's been around for almost 2,600 years. And we have wonderful examples. Thich Nhat Hanh, you know, besides Jetsuma, Pema Chodron, Venerable Upton Chodron, some Western well-known teachers, Venerable Rabina from Australia. You know, there are so many people from around the world, different countries from the West now, still many living Tibetan masters from Bhutan, following this path, practicing it, putting it in. It's still valid, but no one's saying that you have to be a Buddhist. You can just take what's helping you. That's our point, is from compassion and loving kindness, we're carrying this teaching in our hearts and sharing it still, because it does bring people out of suffering. And it doesn't say you have to be a Buddhist to come out of suffering. The Buddha wasn't trying to start Buddhism. He was just trying to find a way to help people come out of suffering. That's it.
Yeah, and I think that acknowledging our suffering is important, because then we can start to unravel it, you know, even
Absolutely.
asking ourselves those deeper questions.
Absolutely. We have to be very brave, and we have to say, so sometimes I teach meditation, and especially in the West, I go into high schools and give some talks and just teach breath meditation, just staying focused on breathing in, breathing out, just being in peace. I don't talk about Buddhism at all. There's one class in Gray, Maine, where our little Buddhist center is, Tashi Getzeling, that there's a world religions class that's an elective, so that junior and senior students in the high school can sign up free choice for 2 years to study world religions, which is awesome. You know, they have that choice at the public school there. So I do go in and give a talk. I was just doing it by Zoom this year because I'm not coming back to the States as I usually do once a year because of the epidemic. But, you know, besides that class, I don't talk about Buddhism, but I do talk to the students seriously about health and about this inner hygiene of taking care of themselves physically, secular ethics, and inner hygiene, and using breath, breathing in, aware of breathing in, breathing out, aware of breathing out, and then just following a very, very simple investigation to what do most people do that you know to find peace when they take a break. You know, this is high school students, and I went to high school in Holyoke, so I know what it was like in the 80s, and I know what high school students do in the US especially. So I said, there's a word though that people start to look for peace that's just the same word as meditation in English, different only by one letter. And think about, what word am I thinking about? When people have difficulties, they turn to this to help them through it. And I said, for their mental, emotional difficulties or for their physical difficulties, and then they think about it. And they say, oh, mediation. I said, no, don't take a letter out. Just change one letter. You don't need to move letters around. And then the hand will go up and say, oh, medication. Yes, people turn to medication. They self-medicate, or they go to a doctor to get medication. In that word, in meditation, I started to think about this about 20 years ago when I was teaching in Hawaii. What is the connection between these two words? Because they have the same root, meditation and medication, and you change one letter. So I researched it a little bit, and it turns out into the English, they came from Greek. And Greek, metta, means to pay attention to be aware of, to listen closely. And Greek doctors used to listen to the breath very carefully. And our doctor or nurse practitioner still does this today. With the stethoscope, will say, take a deep breath, and they'll start listening to see how you're doing with your breath. And so I said to the students, and I'd suggest to you watching this, that meditation is a deep listening. It's a deep way to find inner peace. It's a deep way to tune in, to go beyond the yoga that many people are familiar with now in the US, which is doing poses and postures and stretches and doing something for your physical activity that it relaxes you and it helps your mind. But in our practice of yoga, we just sit on the cushion or in a chair. You don't have to even sit on a cushion. You can just sit nice and straight in a chair with your feet flat on the floor. You're just breathing in through the nose, breathing into the body, and feeling how good it feels to take a deep breath. And then you're breathing out and you're letting the body sink and settle, and how good it feels to just pay attention to your breath. And after that exhale, after letting breath out, you just rest. It's a natural pause. And there's not more to it than that. You just pay attention, breathing in, you keep your eyes half open, half closed, just soft gaze. Feels really good, just makes you smile. Breathing in, aware of breathing in. Your heart center starts to feel pretty happy and warm. You can follow the breath down to your belly, to the diaphragm. As you breathe in, your body should fill up with air, so your diaphragm's like a balloon. It's got space in it, it just expands. And breathing out, after you breathe in through the nose. Imagine the breath coming all the way down from the diaphragm up the front of the body, breathing out again through the nose. And after you breathe out, you just rest. You just let the body take the next breath when it's ready. And when the body's ready and the next breath comes, you just know, breathing in, aware of breathing in. Breathing out, aware of breathing out. And there's a natural stillness that's there, and then just resting. You can just say resting, aware of resting. So, you see, I'm teaching you just a very simple meditation that we use to begin all of our practices and our prayers with. And I didn't mention anything about Buddha or Buddhism. So you really don't need to have that on board. If you're not that interested in it, that's fine. But what you can get interested in is maybe some of the practices and techniques and some of the approach to looking at, what do we mean by mind or by consciousness, or where is mind? What does mind have as its qualities, and things that our culture in the West hasn't really investigated. We can look at as a very good academic approach, and to start to really think about what does it mean to have a really clean, clear mind, and what if we learned how to do things naturally with our mind that would take us into a very simple and yet very informed and wise approach to find relaxation. Peace of mind will never be found out there. And we have a horrible opiate epidemic happening all over North America and around the world, and people can find peace of mind by turning inward, by valuing their own true essence, that they have a conscious mind, that their mind's nature is clean, radiant, pure, clear, beginningless, endless. And you'd say, well, no one ever taught me how to breathe, and no one's ever taught me about mind. No one's taught these things, but we need to learn them because there's power in it. There's incredible joy and beauty in it. And we need to know about these things. They're essential. They're essential. And so, Buddhism is 2,600 years old almost, and it was wiped out in India for a long time. There were invasions, and that Nalanda University and tradition I told you about in Northeast India was completely decimated. It was only discovered by an archaeologist just maybe 150 years ago, and now it's been completely restored, and it's an archaeological, I think it's a World Heritage Site actually. But what happened was, before Buddhism was decimated and wiped out of India, the teachers from the Nalanda University went up to Tibet by the invitation of the Tibetan king at the time in the 8th century. He had heard about some Buddhist teachings, and he had married 2 wives, one from China and one from Nepal, and the wives both happened to be Buddhists. They brought some statue of the Buddha and told the king in Tibet a bit about the Buddhist teaching. So the king from Tibet sent some ministers down to India from the high Himalayas of Tibet to learn more about Buddhism, to start to learn how to write in the script of India so that Tibet could develop its own written script. It never had a written script, so that these teachings and these practices could be preserved. And so Tibet has been holding this tradition very purely for over 1,000 years, which is why we still have it in this format. Why these teachings and these practices are still with us is because this small culture, Tibetan Buddhist culture that had its own country, its own traditions, and was following the Buddhist teachings, not as a secular society necessarily, it was quite kind of a feudal society, but everyone from the families that weren't sending themselves into the monasteries to their children who would go to the monasteries and nunneries would share the practices back with the families. They'd meet as a society for months on end with these big practices and festivals. And so it's very much alive because it migrated up into Tibet. And then, of course, Buddhism spread. It had already spread into China and northern India. It went down into Bhutan and Vietnam and Thailand and Korea and over to Japan and eventually into Indonesia across the water. So it has been part of South Asian and Southeastern Asian culture for a long time, but it's only recently in terms of history that it's come to the West. So it's only recently through, some cultural possibilities, cultural connections, that it's met coming from the East into the West. And now I like to say we have a great opportunity because we can have the rising of the West, with its focus on material science, exploration of the external reality, the East with its awareness of the inner happiness, the way of emotions, the way of meditation, coming together. And we have a wonderful opportunity now to blossom like a lotus and have a rising of the West. This is a really beautiful opportunity of our 21st century. And it really doesn't, we can pay a tribute and say how wonderful that Buddhism has these practices. And we do share them with interfaith settings where people don't have meditation as necessarily a part of their tradition, or we can share meditation in secular settings where there's no need at all to mention anything. And it wouldn't even be appropriate, in the public school necessarily to be trying to talk anything about religion unless people are asking questions about, well, what do Buddhists believe in and such and such. But to practice something basically like breathing in and breathing out and resting, finding peace in between the breath. I say like in Maine, because we're on the ocean, there's a tide that comes in, the moon is pulling the water up and it's a high tide. And then before it goes into low tide, there's what's called a slack tide. So it stays high. And then just for a few minutes, if you didn't know about it, you'd miss it. But if you're somewhere like where my friends live in Maine, where it's mixed water and there's an incoming high tidal point that you can see on the rocks and the water stops, it's called slack tide. And breath is like that. It reaches a point when we're full up with breath. When we breathe in, we can't breathe in anymore. We breathe out. That's like the tide going out. And then we rest. Because at high tide, once we've breathed in, we don't have to hold the breath, but we notice no more breath is coming in. And then we can just stay in that pause for just a minute, not even a minute, and then let the breath naturally come out. And then after the exhalation, we're not again holding the breath, we're not trying not to breathe, but we notice that it starts to get longer. There's a longer rest in between after the exhale, that our awareness, our inner awareness is watching, and nothing's happening again. It's like a slack tide. There's no coming up or going out any further, and we're just resting. And if we can, again, watch in nature how many natural rhythms, Mother Nature takes her time. She needs time. We have a lot of violent nature right now because we've been messing with Mother Nature. Don't mess with Mother Nature. Some of you might remember the old, I think it was a margarine commercial with like some lady dressed up as a faux Indian trying to like push some kind, was it margarine? Do you remember this commercial I'm talking about?
I
In
remember.
the US, anyway, I'm talking to the US audience now from people who grew up in the 70s, and like some lightning and all this like havoc would come out, and then she'd hold up this butter. I think it was for the butter, for some butter, from natural butter. She'd say, don't mess with Mother Nature, meaning like Mother Nature's got it right. And so the tides and their natural rhythms are very gentle. They'll come in, they'll get high, they'll rest, they'll go out, they'll get low. It will seem like there's out so far, they'll never come in again, but they'll come back in again. Our breathing wants to flow like that. And our awareness that follows something very calm and rhythmic and peaceful will then start to help create inner transformation, because it's our mind that's more essential than our body. Our body is going to respond to the state of our mind. If our mind is feeling stressed, hectic, our mind is looking for some kind of peace of mind, happiness, comfort. If we have habits that have allowed the body to override and only respond to different changing states of mind, like hunger. If every time we feel hunger, we feel like, oh, I have to go get food. Or every time we feel we need water, I have to go get water. You know, there are moments when we need to take care of the body, but they're far and few between. What we really need is a happy mind throughout our whole waking day and our sleeping night. We want to have nice dreams. We don't really need as much physical support as we do inner strength and peace of mind. That our mind is with us everywhere. Really, the amount of time that we spend on attending to physical, what do we need to do to exercise? What kind of foods do we need, and organics and all this kind of thing? It's really not as important as people think. What's much more important and essential is having peace of mind. If you have peace of mind, you rejoice that you have your food there, but here at the nunnery, we eat our meals in maybe 5 or 10 minutes finished. A lot of us eat only 2 meals a day, breakfast and lunch, then finished. Maybe a very little light medicine meal at dinner time, like some soup, very simple, then finished. But the rest of the whole time that you're moving throughout the day, your mind is with you. If your mind's not happy, food isn't going to do it for you. If your mind's not happy, having another glass of wine isn't going to do it for you, because eventually you're going to wake up and then your body's not going to be feeling good. Your head's going to be sore. Wine's dehydrating. You have to get up and get a drink of water in the middle of the night. We reach for things that bring us temporary satisfaction. There's nothing wrong with temporary satisfaction. For sure, I'm not saying you have to eat like a Tibetan Buddhist monastic diet. I'm not suggesting that. But I'm saying just check it out. Check up for yourself. Does it make sense to try to learn more, to use something you have with you all the time, like breath and your awareness? So when we watch breath, we're just using our natural awareness. We're connecting with the body. We're inviting the body to calm down. We're inviting the heart rate to calm down, the blood pressure to calm down. We don't need a special room to do meditation in. We can do this breathing anytime. We always have our breath with us. What makes more sense to you? To be independent and self-sufficient and reliant on being able to do practice that brings you happiness and peace of mind wherever you are? Because it's like taking an inner time out. Like, just, my teacher called it an inner shower. He'd always laugh when he was teaching in the West and say, oh, West people like to take so many showers every day. They shower when they get up, or after they come back from the gym, they take another shower. Before they go to bed, they take a shower. He said, better you just do this little breathing meditation, even for 2 minutes or 5 minutes before going to sleep. And when you wake up, before you go to take breakfast, just take, brush your teeth and get yourself ready for your day. But just take 5 minutes sitting, breathing in and breathing out, maybe remembering your dreams, letting them go, but proving to yourself that you can actually remember your dreams, then breathing in, breathing out, not thinking about the day ahead, just thinking about the precious that you have breath in this moment, calm, peaceful, happy, grateful that you have life, not knowing what the day holds, how it's going to unfold, but feeling up to it, starting from taking that inner kind of cleanse, inner space, clearing, and then starting the day like that. Or at the end of the day, releasing what's built up through the day. Well, just coming back to the moment, the here and now, before you go to sleep, letting it go, emptying it out. So again, like the metaphor we'll keep working with, because I'm with it now on the ocean, and maybe I'm missing Maine a little bit. The ocean has tides because it's also a cleansing process. If you've ever walked on the beach anywhere, but in Maine, we have beaches where if a lot of seaweed has come up on the beach after high tide, it's clearing it out. And then the ocean, again, it's bringing sometimes the seaweed back up on high tide, and things are coming and living there, and stones and shells are decomposing. That's how the sand is created. It's process, but it's a flow. We don't like it when things get out of balance, then they get, really overpowering. So our own minds are like that. We need a flow. We need the peace of mind. And when life feels completely unpredictable, which truthfully, life is always unpredictable. Even before COVID, your life was unpredictable. We're not knowing what life is going to bring. Even His Holiness the Dalai Lama, people who are very highly realized beings, they're not, here to predict the future. They're just here living day in and day out, capable of meeting whatever life's challenges will bring. Like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, he's had horrible challenges of this life, of losing his country, many of his countrymen, millions dying, displaced, all of the sacred temples, all of the beautiful statues, all of the texts completely destroyed. And he's still laughing, he's still happy, he's still guiding, he's still encouraging projects that will bring happiness to others, no matter what interests they have, what traditions they have. He's meeting with all different kinds of people, scientists, religious leaders, feminists, politicians. He just wants to help his fellow 8 billion human beings. That's the point of it for us. We just are here to help you find what will bring you more loving kindness, compassion, sorrowless bliss. That's a good one to work on. And with equanimity. So in other words, not leaving anyone outside of our love. Everyone wants to be happy. That wish for happiness is the same as my wish for happiness. That's very clear. So, we want to think about meditation as another approach, in a way that we haven't necessarily been taught, to turn inward and to, yes, show up to our experience, to show up to our feelings. There are hard feelings. There is sadness. There is suffering. There is fear. There is anxiety. To allow the space for these truths to be seen. And there is natural happiness. There is natural joy. There is natural presence, awareness, and to meet those equally. To find that we have a mind that's spacious enough and big enough to welcome everything in without judging. It's all welcomed. And it is because it's your experience. It's a human experience. And it deserves for you to be able to welcome it in. Sometimes when I'm with people, they really, for some reason, maybe are sharing something and they start to really cry. They really are sharing something for the first time that they've been carrying privately, that they've never shared. And then the next thing they start to say is, "I'm sorry." I say, stop that. There's no need. There's no need. If you were laughing right now, you wouldn't be saying to me, "Oh, I'm sorry." We don't have to apologize that we have sorrow, that we have challenge, that we have suffering and broken hearts. We don't have to apologize. Of course we do. We won't be the first people to have them. We won't be the last ones. It's part of our human experience. There are challenges in this life. It's not the only thing that's there, of course, but it's there. It can be seen. It can be held. We have big enough hearts to embrace that too. So trust yourself, trust your feelings, trust your experience, but don't get stuck there. Don't cry so many tears that you feel like you're going to drown in them. Just let them come out. And then take some deep breaths. And we all know it always feels better after we cry. It's like we feel cleansed. We feel capable again to say, you know what, that actually felt pretty good to have that big cry. And now I'm really not thinking so much about it matters to have to go get something outside of myself, to go get some kind of something that will numb us from our feelings. Often if we take substances, our feelings are not as true. If we take something that heightens the feeling, it might make it worse, actually. Sometimes alcohol actually makes heavy feelings feel more difficult. And sometimes we might take marijuana or some kind of sedatives where we feel above or higher than the feelings, right? People who smoke marijuana say they get high, but then we have to still come back down to the feelings. So that's also not a way to be able to grow an inner strength, to be able to just meet feelings, to meet our experience straight up. I'm not judging anything, I haven't been a nun that long. I wasn't born to a family and a nun. So I'm sharing with you from my own experience and realizing, like, I also didn't want to have to look outside of myself for my happiness. When I was a girl, I was always happy. Whether I had to go to school, I was happy to go to school and learn, get on the school bus. I was happy out in the woods, climbing trees, building forts, playing sports, happy to learn how to ride a bike. I mean, life should be an adventure. It's not something that you should feel afraid of. It's an opportunity. I don't know when we started to get convinced that we had to be so afraid of life, but we don't have to be afraid of life. We have to be brave. We have to have courage. Definitely we do. But there's nothing that we can't learn. There's nothing that we can't grow through. We're here, as I said earlier, having studied Darwin, I think that we do evolve in the physical sense. I say that because when I was young, to run a mile, it was being run, a 4-minute mile was a big deal. But now people are pushing a 2-minute mile, so we can evolve. I grew up playing basketball. I was the only girl in my 8th grade that made the boys' 9th grade basketball team, but I played on them, and it was a traveling team. It was a junior varsity freshman boys basketball team. They didn't have a girls' basketball team at the time. And it wasn't even my idea to try out. One of my friends asked me if I'd go and support her trying out. I happened to make the team. And I decided, yeah, I'm going to play. The only girl in the whole league. But it changed things. The next year, a whole girls' league was started. I didn't know about Title IX. I didn't play basketball because I wanted to change things. But it made a big change. After that, all of Western Mass had to have girls' basketball teams because the boys had them. So we're here to live, we're here to love, we're here to evolve and grow in ways that are natural to us, that are organic. But inwardly, I've been thinking a lot about this lately. The word evolve has the word love in it spelled backwards. The first 4 letters, E-V-O-L, are L-O-V-E. I think we're also really here to evolve love. Anyway, that's my present work that I'm going for. And so I hope you'll consider joining me on that big project, because we need a team effort. And that's what Julie's doing. She's evolving love and light and talking about going beyond yoga. And so, that's everyone's personal opportunity and right to do in their own lifetime. And we need this more than ever. And not just we as human beings need it for our peace and happiness and needing each other. The planet needs us to do it now. We've got to be really serious about this. And we don't even necessarily, it's good if we have agreements around the world, but individually, one by one, we can do a lot. Without even knowing what we're doing, we can make good conscious choices. Simple living does save lives. So think about, what are the bare essentials for your happiness, for your loving kindness, for your compassion, and for breath, the beauty of getting so much out of doing a breath meditation is it's free. You always have it with you, and it works everywhere.
It is free.
You know, you don't have to be flexible. You don't have to twist into any kind of asanas. You don't need a special seat. You don't need to sit like a pretzel. You can just breathe wherever you are. You can use breath when you're lying down to relax. But when I'm talking about breath, I'm saying try to be alert and just appreciate before falling asleep from the relaxation that it really can sharpen and heighten your awareness and start to become more aware of your mind and the qualities of your real, beautiful, clear light nature of mind. Because we all have that.
We do. And what I've noticed, I had a job over the summer.
Yes.
For the first time in a long time. And there was this, so I worked with all these young people at a
Yes.
restaurant. And this girl, she was the hostess. And I was standing there while she was off doing something, and the phone rang, and I answered it, and I took a reservation, and I changed a reservation from 4 people to 2 people. And it's all in pencil, so I just erased it and put the new number. And before I had a chance to explain this to her, she said, please don't ever do that again. She's like shaking. She's like, I had everything all set. And I said, and I'm just listening. And she said, I have anxiety. And so I can't handle like change like this. And that was so incredible for me. So I said, do you want to be an anxious person? And she was like, like that question brought her anxiety. And I said, I could tell like she didn't even know how to answer me. So she was like 20 years old. I said, well, if you want help with your anxiety, I can help you. But before I leave this stand here, I'm just going to share that if you take a deep breath right now through your belly, that your anxiety very well could be washed away in an instant. You don't have to carry that. It's not necessarily yours to carry. Right. So what that showed me, after having been a long time yoga and Buddhist practitioner, that there's a lot of input that comes into the collective that kind of determines the words that we use and the language and the feels that we're going to have. And that something as simple as like you're sharing with us about following the breath, it brings us to the love of self, because all of a sudden I've got more awareness. So when the input's coming in, I'm not just going to jump on a bandwagon. And I call it, and this is something I learned in my Buddhist studies, and it's a Tibetan phrase. And it's funny because I used to live in Dharamsala, and Tibetans didn't know this phrase. I'd be sharing it, and it's Pluksum Namdak, which was expressed to me as radical personal responsibility. And it's like, if we don't have that for ourselves, then we're constantly giving our power away. And, those are, again, key phrases that people are talking about these days, is like, oh, I'm empowered and I'm not giving my power away. But you have to be conscious of yourself. And that's what I think is so important about what you're sharing with us. And what the philosophy of Buddhism gives to us.
Can I ask, I hope that girl took a breath with you. I hope she took you up on that.
Well, the funny thing was that she got more angry and more stressed out. And that also was a teaching for me, because I was offering, but I knew, because she was getting physically more upset. And I knew that I only had her attention in this moment for the rest of our lives, because that job ended for me very quickly after that. So I said it to her, and then I took the breaths, and invited her to take them with me. And then
Oh yeah,
I sauntered off joyfully.
yeah. Well, that's all we can do. I mean, what's very difficult for this generation of that age of 20 something, 20, maybe 25 and down, is that they've been completely brought up connected to being disconnected completely, because of the machines, because of the computers, because of the cell phones. And so much of what comes over that is not very intentional. So, 3 words: intention, motivation, dedication. The intention is not clean, clear, and pure for their highest happiness and non-harming. The thought of the motivation of what the effect and impact is going to do and have is sometimes not there, or at worst is sometimes there in not a good way. And then the dedication, there's no dedication to people's happiness. It's a dedication towards getting the opinion heard by speaking the loudest or continually speaking over someone or selling something, and so it creates so much dissonance and discord. It's no wonder that this generation has so much anxiety, because they're plugging into that all the time. And it was wonderful that you offered a solution, but it's not surprising to me that was overwhelming for her, because her truth and her anxiety now has become an identity for her.
Yeah.
People will say, I am anxious, I have ADHD, I am, and they're just owning it. And the more the mind tells itself that, the more whatever we're thinking, that's what we're going to become. It's the mind that's driving the physical, not the other way around. But because people don't get trained and taught to investigate, well, what is the mind? What is its real nature? What are some of the things we can do naturally to be able to help the mind discover its true nature? Because after all, that's how we're going to discover it, by using our own mind, our own innate awareness. It's very difficult. So it was a good on you effort, and maybe it will come to her at some point. You never know. I always think, as I said earlier in the talk, that nothing's wasted on the path, and these moments come for a reason. And sometimes we can let it be and just maybe privately put an intention: Om Mani Padme Hum, meaning hail to the jewel in the lotus, meaning here's the Buddha in front of me, not knowing this is the Buddha, and giving love and compassion. Or doing what you could, as you said, you didn't have a lot of time with these people, and you could see that she was really upset, and trying to give her something that she could work with. So, no harm in trying, I think.
Figured I planted a seed somewhere. I gave her an option, whether she could hear it in the moment or not. I and I'm a pretty happy person, having done so much work. I usually maneuver, myself sweetly in these situations, but it really inspired me, actually. I've had the young, like you said, the under 25s in my heart for some time.
Yeah.
And that was kind of proof that I want to start working with younger people.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
That would be very, very nice for them. And as I said, I still do quite a bit with the teenagers when I'm back in Maine. And here we have a lot of young nuns that I'm responsible for, sometimes as a meditation teacher, and now as an astronomy teacher, although I'm learning with them. But we've just decided to get a telescope and put it up on the temple roof so that we can discuss what we can see of the universe, so that they get some science, and they're quite, stimulated and quite game about it. So it's quite fun. But of course, here it's great to talk with them about meditation, and they're already such great meditators. Even 5 to 7 to 10-year-olds can sit, 20 minutes very quietly, and they can do their walking meditation for now maybe up to 30 or 40 minutes without getting silly. So they really quite felt like proud of themselves as they've come along, as we've started last year, and then increased the amount of time that they're able to practice. So anyone can learn it, but not everyone's at the point karmically to take it on. But it will ripen at some point, because it's just makes so much sense that, of course, nature always has self-correcting tools and aspects of its own design, which is just brilliant. Even when we're taking breath, that just shows the deep natural interconnection that we have to this living world. We get our oxygen from the trees and the green, they take the CO2, the carbon, and they use it. And this deep, deep, deep interconnection. Our body's not making our breath, our breath is coming from beyond us. And so there's always opportunities, but everyone has to take advantage at the point when they're able to. That's why we need patience and non-judgment and non-proselytizing or trying to convert anybody. No one wants that. But if there's something that they can use and that makes sense to them, then wonderful.
And just one more quick question that came through is, what does a good meditation look like? I think people are at different, people hear about meditation and mindfulness, and, meditation's a big buzzword. I mean, doctors are actually recommending meditation now. And,
Good.
but what does
I hope as much or more than medication.
Right?
It's the better first starting point for many, many people. It doesn't mean medication isn't needed, but it's not needed as much as it's been prescribed.
Agreed. Yeah. But what does it mean to have a good meditation for an average person?
Yeah. So for an average person, definitely you don't have to feel intimidated by me saying 2 months of retreat or 3 months retreat. Not at all. We're talking about 2 to 5 minutes during the day when you're just starting your practice, just breathing in and breathing out. You can set a little app on your phone. There's a free app called Insight Meditation Timer where it's just got some sounds of like a bell that you can pick which sound you like. It'll go off at the beginning of your session. You can set it for any amount of time you want, from like a minute to hours. So you just set it for between 2 to 5 minutes, whatever you think you can handle, of just being able to sit still and just start to breathe in and breathe out and just following that breath. And then once the breath gets quiet after the out breath, not conscious, not taking another breath, but just watching how is the body beginning to breathe by itself. And all you're doing is watching. You sit in any position you're comfortable in. You sit with your back very straight, chin tucked down a little bit, hands on your lap, or a left hand under the right hand. Just letting the thumbs touch lightly and put those right at your belly button, at your navel. Shoulders relaxed and open so that your breath is moving nicely into the body. Tip of the tongue on the roof of the mouth, behind the teeth. And the eyes very soft, but just open a little bit. Why? Because when the eyes are open a little bit, what you're doing is you're starting to train your own mind, your consciousness that, hey, this feels really good and I'm not going to sleep. If you close your eyes and you start to relax, it often sends through muscle memory the signal to your brain and your mind, oh, time to relax, I'm going to fall asleep and go to bed. You can use it for that if you have insomnia. A lot of people have shared with me that it helps them. But for a meditation, what we're trying to get is calm, relaxed, and alert. Calm, relaxed, alert. And so we're comfortable. The body doesn't need any attending to. Tip of the tongue on the roof of the mouth because it just relaxes our face and our jaw. A little smile. Then breathing in through the nose. Imagine the breath coming up through the top of the head, down into the belly. Just aware, breathing in, aware of breathing in. Breathing out, aware of breathing out. And then resting after the out breath, not just aware of resting, just watching. So now watching, I mean, you're using your inner eye to watch. Your awareness is just doing the meditation by watching the breath. Is it moving or is it still? That's all you're meditating on. Thoughts might come into your mind. Let them be like clouds. When the clouds move through the sky doesn't chase the clouds. The clouds eventually evaporate back into the sky. Let your mind just stay spacious like the sky. Thoughts come up, don't chase them. Don't say, oh, I can't think, I have to stop thinking. Just notice those are thoughts. I'm coming back to the breath. Maybe the thoughts coming up, oh, this seems pretty easy, or I like this, it's not that difficult. Those are just thoughts. Those aren't the breath. Let those thoughts go too. Just stay with the breath. Now check the eyes, because this is the hardest part of learning this technique, because you don't hold your eyes half open and half closed, or, you know, 3/4, 2/3 closed and a little open. Usually they're all open or all closed. Just notice, make sure the eyes haven't closed all the way because you've gotten relaxed. Just let them be open just a little bit. Like mine look like they're closed, but I can still see out here. I can still see out in front of me. And then just continue like this, breathing in and breathing out. And so one breath in is 1 and one breath out is 2. And see if you can follow the breath all the way up to the count of 21 without losing track and without rushing. If you can go all the way up, following the breath in and out, counting up to 21, that's great. That's enough for one session. And then just keep your sessions very short, 2 to 5 minutes. If you can do them in the morning before the sunrise or at sunrise, that's a very good time. At the evening, at sunset, that's a good time. If you can do it one more session before going to sleep, that's a really good time. And then you might decide throughout the course of the day, hey, I like this practice. You can sit at your desk at work, you can do this practice. You can go for a walk and just put your attention to going for a walk, and instead of following breath, you can just feel the movement of your body, the rolling of your feet on the ground. You can just put your attention on walking, the fact that you're walking, not letting your mind go in other directions of what you have to do for work or for grocery shopping, or even the destination of where you're going. Just become aware of walking when you're walking. That becomes your meditation. We can keep it very simple. Remember, just keep it simple, sweetheart. This kiss. So that's a very good beginning meditation for anybody. And it's a very good meditation even for long-term meditators to come back to. You know, this idea from Zen Buddhism of beginner's mind is very good. So just meeting everything in the moment. And then if you like that, you know, you can go from that breath meditation as you get more calm. At the beginning, it's very natural. Your mind will be very noisy and thoughts will be coming and you'll notice them. But that's very natural, and the eyes might be difficult to figure out how to hold them. They might flutter a little bit, but you'll find the right position. And after you get going with that, then you can start doing more other kinds of techniques that build off of this, what's called shamatha, calm abiding meditation. First, we want the mind to come very calmly, very gently, abiding in peace, abiding in presence, and just happy to just be very still. Once we can get the mind to this direction, we can then add what's called vipassana, analytical meditation, insight. Who's meditating? Where's mind? All these kinds of things. But at the beginning, we should really just start with shamatha, calm abiding, keeping the mind on one object. In this case, the breath is very good because we can practice with it everywhere throughout the day. Traveling, waiting in the doctor's office, wherever we are, we can use it. So that's what I always suggest to people. And I think that's what even in the tradition of Tibetan Buddhism, we say we should start with calm abiding, with Shinei, it's called in Tibetan Buddhism, or shamatha in Sanskrit. We should start with that, because if we can really develop a sturdy and stable practice with shamatha, all the other practices we do after that become much, much easier. So you don't have to call it anything. You can just say, oh, I'm just going to be, doing breathing in, knowing that I'm breathing in and breathing out, aware of breathing out, and resting, aware of resting. You don't need to know these fancy terms for it, but do try it, because it's your own experience that you can count on. And if you feel that there's some benefit for yourself, which, as I said, now I've taught really thousands of people around the world, all ages, all nationalities, all religions or no religions. The only complaint that people have ever said to me that they didn't like was that it was hard to hold the eyes open a little bit. But at the beginning, of course, like I said, we don't go around in life with our eyes half open, half closed. They're either all open or all closed. So now you're training the eye muscles a little bit to do something differently, but you can do it. It's possible. And it's because once your mind starts to become familiar with a peaceful state of mind, it's a state that you'll want to maintain throughout whatever you're doing. And most of our life, we're moving with our eyes open. Even if we sleep 8 hours a day, that means for 16 hours, we're up and about moving around. So we want a calm, peaceful, steady state of mind. And keeping the eyes open a little bit as we're starting to develop that, that's the reasoning behind it. See, reason and logic always comes back. So that's how we can start, even as baby meditators, how we've all started, and how to develop a practice that slowly. So it's better to do very short sessions a few times during the day than to try to build out 15 or 20 or 30 minutes just in the morning or in the evening. At the beginning, these days, people are quite busy. Even if you're in quarantine, you have many things that are in lockdown, you have many things you have to attend to for your jobs or through taking care of the house or other people. Just try to keep your sessions very short at the beginning. Why? Because you'll enjoy them and then you'll look forward to it again. If you do too much, it will be a little bit like a task that you'll say, oh yeah, I don't really want to do that anymore. So you want to build up a positive connection to it, something that you look forward to.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your time, your wisdom, and your compassion with all of us today from
My
India.
pleasure. It's my pleasure and my loving kindness to you, because I feel your loving kindness reaching out, trying to help everybody. And what a wonderful project you've put together. May it benefit countless mother beings. May they find what they helps. Even just a little bit is better than nothing at all. So in whatever little bit of way you might find help, we're grateful that Julie found this great inspiration to put this program together. And my wish and prayer is may all beings benefit in the way that feels authentic, that brings more loving kindness, more joy, and more compassion in your own hearts. May we be able to share that far and wide for the benefit and happiness of all our dear mother beings that we're here now on the planet together. There are reasons that we're all here together now at this time. And, we're up for the challenges, I'm sure.
Perfect. Thank you so much.